Welcome back to Trooth's Manga Cafe, everybody. I'm Trooth, and I own and operate an imaginary manga cafe. And I wanted to recommend you something to read while you're there. And you know, as the owner of an imaginary manga cafe made out of non-existent brick and mortar, I thought I should encourage people to read something that doesn't yet have an anime adaptation. I need to learn to edit my videos faster. Because, I could tell you all about this great series and oh, you can just watch it on TV and you don't even have to read. Well, here's one that you can't watch. As of now. Oh, hold on. My last video was about a big hardcover volume, but this is just kind of your regular paperback, so I need something to stand it up on. How's about a little bookend here? There we go. We're looking at Komi Can't Communicate, or maybe you know it by the Japanese title, Komi-san wa komyusho desu. I think that's it, I don't know. Now, if you spend any kind of time talking to people on the internet, Discord servers, internet forums, things like that, you've probably seen people with avatars of this character just all over the place. You've probably seen this face so many times and just been like, what the heck is this from? At least, that was me for a while, and so I was seeing these avatars popping up everywhere and been like, okay, this must be some hugely popular thing. And usually when that's the case, I'll see those avatars popping up, and it's because some hot new anime is coming out. Well, not the case with this one. This one you just have to read. This is good, though. This is good news. I'm excited. Maybe you'll hear my thoughts in more detail after it comes out. We'll see. For now, just pretend this never happened. Now, this one has a pretty simple premise. The main character is Komi. This is Komi. That's her right there. She's the main character, and, well, what do you know? She can't communicate. That's the title and the premise. She is somebody who has intense social anxiety, or as they repeatedly refer to it in the text, she has a communication disorder. I guess that's a way to put it. But the idea is that everybody in her high school class thinks she is this just incredibly unreachable, stuck-up class queen who doesn't talk to anybody because she sees herself as above them, and she just refuses to associate with all these lesser people. The actual case being that she really wants to talk to people, she actually doesn't have any friends, and it's all up to the main character who is, the other main character who is kind of here in the background, to kind of finally break the ice with her, manage to talk to her, and kind of start to identify with her struggles, and to help her live a more well-rounded life that she's shooting for. Her end goal is to make 100 friends, and so the series is about all these different people she meets, and all the friends she makes along the way. So this is a manga that's kind of outside my general comfort zone. It's not the kind of thing I usually read. I mean, you might look around at this desk and be like, okay, here's Chainsaw Man, here's JoJo, here's Alita under here, here's Uzumaki. Basically everything on this table is something like horribly adult and violent and maybe even disgusting and gory. Komi is none of the above, really. It's just basically a straight-up comedy series with, fairly standalone chapters. Even has some light romance elements to it. Now, it's not as plot-driven as the kind of thing I usually read. I mean, it has that kind of stated goal of Komi wants to make 100 friends, but it addresses that goal at a very leisurely pace. I mean, I could easily see another artist taking that premise and making it exactly 100 chapters long, and then it's over. But this one really just kind of lets the characters breathe. It doesn't even introduce a new character every chapter. And a lot of it just has to do with, you know, funny social situations, the occasional schmaltzy heartwarming moment, that kind of thing. A very light read. I started out reading this series just to kind of be like, I wonder what all the hype is about. And I continued reading it just because, as I'm sitting there reading it, just, you know, if you see me there in the manga cafe reading a volume of this one, odds are I'll just have a big stupid grin on my face the whole time. Oh no, my green screen is falling down. Okay, sorry, I just had to deal with some technical difficulties in the manga cafe. Now I'm not sure where I was. Anyway, I think one of the best ways I can describe this manga is wholesome. It's just very, like, sugary sweet and just heartwarming all the time. I mentioned that whenever I'm reading it, I'm usually just sitting there grinning like an idiot. I'm not always laughing out loud at it. I mean, certainly it has a lot of those laugh-out-loud comedy moments, but it's more of just, like, just a joy to read in general, more so than something that'll get you huge gut-busting laughs. I think the main character, Komi, is really interesting. She's well written. A lot of the times you'll be reading a chapter and I can't speak for everybody, but I find myself laughing at it, not because her social anxiety and issues are funny or like something to laugh at, but because it's just so relatable. Because I feel like a lot of people feel the way she does in a lot of unusual social situations. It's not like this deep, analytical, nuanced look at social anxiety and other issues. It more just uses those as kind of a light-hearted comedic backdrop. But it doesn't do this in a way to suggest that, like, people with social anxiety are lesser or anything like that. In fact, I would say it's quite the opposite in the case of this series. There's this almost kind of fetishization of Komi, which is a little weird. I mean, if you haven't gotten too far into the manga yet, you might not know what I'm talking about, but just... So I'm not even fully caught up on it, but, you know, maybe 170-ish chapters in, there came a point past the 100-chapter mark, I forget exactly when, where the opening illustration of the chapter is just a big old close-up of Komi's feet, and this wasn't at all relevant to the story of that chapter. It's just, here's her feet, if you're interested. I mean, that illustration was probably there specifically for the people who are very interested. And I mean, there's definitely plenty of chapters and situations where the kind of punchline or the kind of takeaway is just, Komi is desirable. To give you a more concrete example, I guess, I mean, more concrete than something that is obviously like blatant foot fetish bait, there's a chapter where Komi puts on chapstick. This chapter is about 4 pages long in total, and it's basically just several illustrations in a row of Komi applying chapstick with a bunch of close-ups on her face and lips. That's about it. The ending statement of the chapter was, oh, everybody in her class saw her putting on chapstick, and everybody was like, oh man, I should get some chapstick too. That's it. It was just weird to read a chapter that's only 4 pages long, and really the only thing that happens is Komi puts on some chapstick. It has nothing to do with this central idea of Komi having social anxiety and overcoming issues. It's literally just fan service. But I mean, again, this isn't a very story-heavy manga. It's not a condemnation of it when there's a chapter where nothing really happens. But I mean, there are definitely times where it feels less like the English title should be Komi Can't Communicate, and more like the title should be Komi is Desirable. And, you know, personally, I'm not one who is really in it for the waifu bait, but I will say the series has really well-written characters. I mean, I will say the artist does a really great job with the characters. A lot of them are kind of one-off characters who Komi just meets basically to be a checklist in her book of friends on her way to 100. And then after that one chapter where they're introduced and she becomes friends with them, they don't really appear in the story that much afterwards. But I'm sure it would be really hard to juggle 100 individual characters who all have distinct and interesting personalities, especially to try and keep them all relevant over the course of hundreds of chapters. Now, my favorite of these characters is Najimi, and this is a character who is kind of complicated to introduce, I guess. Now, if you started out reading this series online, maybe reading fan translations, in my experience, reading that kind of source material, I noticed that the translators tended to refer to this character as male, whereas the kind of print translation that we have sold in stores or stocked at fine imaginary manga cafes everywhere tend to refer to the character as female if they use any kind of gendered language at all. And it's not really clear whether the character wants to identify as male or female because the main kind of male character here, he meets Najimi in high school and is like, hey, weren't you a boy back when we were in elementary school? And Najimi's just kind of like, I don't know what you were talking about. And, you know, nowadays Najimi wears a girl's school uniform, you know, is wearing a skirt and is usually wearing girls' clothes in general, and is kind of an ambiguous character, but you know, ordinarily I would be inclined to say, oh yeah, obviously this is a transgender character and you should just refer to Najimi as a girl. But there's also a chapter kind of early on that kind of complicates this issue where a guy wants to date Najimi and Najimi is like, oh no, I'm a boy, I'm not interested, and like, I wouldn't really want to like say something ignorant on the subject and be like, oh well, in my personal opinion, this character has this identity and so therefore I must refer to this character by my own decision. I just kind of am inclined to refer to Najimi as female because that's what the text repeatedly does here. But I mean, it's hard to know how it should be written, because in Japanese they don't really have a lot of gendered pronouns like we do in English. But at any rate, this doesn't really have anything to do with why this is my favorite character, and I don't think it's an issue that this author really has a lot of stake in either. Najimi is fun just because she's like the most outgoing person and like the complete opposite of Komi, and just brings so much energy to every chapter, and, you know, also provides a lot of the kind of comic setups and comic relief. She kind of eggs everybody on and also like brings out the best in everybody, and also likes to kind of play up the romantic tension between the other characters. I guess I should also talk about the kind of romance aspect of this story. Again, I'm not a big romance reader, but I assume in your usual kind of romance manga there would be this kind of situation where complicated romance is the main driving conflict, and there'll usually be an issue of, oh, who is the main character going to end up with, and oh, who should get together with who in the end. And this series doesn't really have a lot of that. Basically, these two kind of have to be like OTP. I can't believe I'm even using that word right now. But really, again, this is more of a comedy series than a romance series. There are so many hints throughout this series that, oh, Komi secretly has a crush on Tadano here, but she just can't admit it, and oh, when will she ever be true to her feelings, and oh, you know, he totally, definitely has a thing for her also. I mean, who couldn't love her? She's like the class queen, and everybody looks up to her and wishes they could be with her, but everybody just knows they're just not worthy, and will they ever admit their feelings for each other? And it's a lot of that. And I won't say that their relationship never goes anywhere, but it definitely spins its wheels a lot. It's a very will they, won't they kind of thing. And usually something else comes along to diffuse any situation where romantic tension starts to build up. You know, I usually feel the need to comment on the artwork of a manga. I mean, obviously that's gonna make up at least 50% of the content of the book. But this is one where, I mean, I don't find it that remarkable. I mean, it's very cartoony, and a lot of the times the characters are drawn very simplistically. And in fact, to loop this back to the beginning of the video, if you, like me, saw a bunch of Komi avatars on the internet, you probably saw, like, the cartoonish, simplified version of her face, which is used very often throughout the series. It was very interesting, though, revisiting this first volume in preparation for this video, and seeing just how the art style has evolved over time. That kind of trademark cartoony bug-eyed look that Komi has all the time looked so different in Volume 1, you know, in those first few chapters. She just looked so dopey and just like spacey when she made that face, whereas in the later chapters it just kind of, it becomes more of like a look of intensity, of just like, just a kind of overwhelmedness and alertness, I guess. So as I'm making this video, there are about 12 of these paperback volumes available for print in the US. They cost about $9.99 each. There are sure to be a lot more. Like I said, I've read about 170-ish chapters, and I know there's at least 100 that are out in Japan. The series is still ongoing, and I don't know if there's any end in sight at the moment. But as of right now, this one volume is the only volume that's in my personal collection. Honestly, I find it really hard to start to collect a series if I have no idea if there's any kind of end in sight. Like, there might be a dozen volumes out now, but there might be several more dozens before the series is over, and I don't really have the shelf space to commit to something of that size yet. But I would definitely give this one a try. I mean, I personally might not be into the waifu bait angle of it, but it's really a good comfort read, just for kind of like the light-hearted comedy and all the fun characters. It's a really good one to just revisit. It's good to have a few volumes on the shelf just so you can revisit some of those funnier times. Or, you know, if you're ever in my fictional manga cafe, just grab a volume or two off the shelf, sit and have a read for a while. But anyway, that's about it from me today. You can go ahead and leave some comments here if you want to suggest other series for the future, or share your own thoughts on this series. Over here there's a list of my Patreon supporters for this channel. Feel free to click the link down below in the description to join them and financially support the Manga Cafe and any other series I might be doing in the future. You can follow me on Twitter and you'll get some more occasional casual recommendations from me. You can follow me on Twitch, where I occasionally stream games. You can join my Discord server to talk about this series and many others. Anyway, you know, like and subscribe and all that good stuff. I'm just kind of killing some time for the fade out at the end of the video so that I give those donators some time to see their name on screen. That's what it's all for in the end. Oh man, I hope I get a bigger donator one day so that I can actually read their name out loud. That'll be the day. Someone's gotta keep the lights on in this manga cafe.